Let's move on to, the new and old issues of Arena. So all these major changes that we just discussed introduced in the last test new issues as well. So new improvements, but new issues that CA will now have to work towards fixing. What is the biggest new issue that you found, Gunslinger?
Issue? You mean balance issue?
Could it be a balance issue? Could be any other issue. Or could be even a Mishu, if you want.
An issue with Mr. Zoo?
Mishu.
God.
Go for it.
I mean, balance probably, just because there's so much work to be done with how the meta shakes out. And, I mean, like I said earlier, how people learn to farm XP, how people learn to not feed XP, how people, all those things can change. They might even not even be optimal, but whatever people start actually doing is what matters, and that's how the game has to be designed around. And right now it looks like just being mobile and having and being a bit tanky, you're able to contest points is probably the strongest attributes in any unit, just because it's about map control, and like we said earlier, the focus of your victory conditions in every game has changed a lot more. It's not just secure an early man lead and exploit that like it was before, or just like deathball v deathball in competitive modes, especially with AoE buffs, whatever. But now it's a lot more mobile, it's a lot more consistent. So you kind of gotta CA, and more importantly, has to see how that shakes out and what needs to be touched on. And yeah, if like I said earlier, probably cavalry and elephants are probably your best bet, or at least tanky cavalry, just so you can contest points and actually secure points, which therefore wins the game. So it's interesting, but we'll have to see how it shakes out, especially in higher tiers where units are pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So you've mentioned goodness, I lost my train of thought. So you didn't really provide any hard examples on which units you think are the best, just provided the attributes. But in my experience, those units are a lot stronger and some units are a lot weaker. For example, in my experience, obviously, since I'm a range main, maybe was a range main due to the reasons I'm about to lay out. So ranged units
is the fact that damage is your source isn't your source of XP, and it's more unit kills. That also kind of has a pretty good effect on what units and what playstyles you want to be having to actually be killing units. Things like artillery, things that soften people up, just aren't really that good. Even a full cav charge won't get you any XP because you're not killing models sometimes.
Oh yes, down to the math. Thank you very much, Gunslinger, for that.
You wanted me to do this.
I wanted you to do exactly the opposite, rather. But okay. So, as I was saying, or rather, you reminded me of what I wanted to say. You mentioned, the dev blobs of AoE buffs. That also comes down to the math, right? Because people have figured out, let's just stack all the buffs and let's just have, all the effects, all the Vichis, all the rebellions, all the vengeances, all the prescriptions, all that shit stacked one on top of another, and just move as one big dev blob. And if the enemy doesn't have the same buffs to match us, just our stats alone will overwhelm them. Doesn't matter if we are surrounded, doesn't matter if we are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, or whatever. Our dev blob of buffs and debuffs will wreck everything, right? So unless you manage to just circumvent the slow blob and cap their base, you're pretty much done for with that strategy. And the introduction of capture points all around the map helps that a little bit, because teams will have to divide, send some people on the right flank, some people on the left flank, some people to the middle. Otherwise, they're just gonna lose on points eventually, right? and the killing of that death blob won't be as effective because, well, you can just respawn, right, and then match them in the base even if they get to it. And you can outmaneuver them all in all sorts of ways. So yes, maneuverability definitely much better. Therefore, cavalry definitely much better, and a lot more people will be picking cavalry. That's one of the reasons why the ranged units are weaker. A ranged unit is also weaker because they cannot contest points. There's no decaps, which that's how they were useful in terms of holding bases in the past. No decaps. They cannot contest caps on their own. If they get into a cap and start capping it, or contesting it, if there's no melee unit to hold an enemy unit, melee unit incoming, they have to run away, right? And if that's cavalry, they're dead without help. So yeah, ranged units in all sorts of way become weaker, and they haven't really become stronger in any other sense. Not really in terms of XP gain from what I've seen either. Like I haven't seen my archers like really going, crazy on amount of XP they were gaining compared to anyone else. So
I mean,